Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmitz_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmitz.
Welcome to it. Great to have you in on Wednesday. It's Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbal. We are loaded up. What will Wednesday bring with the return to play chant for Big Ten and Nebraska football? We'll spend some time on it. 466-3776. 466-3776. 800-825-5865. numbers to join us. Can find us on Twitter. Give us a follow. Chris Schmidt at Schmidt_radio. At Herbal Essence for Elijah Herbal. And email Chris at HailVarsity.com. Coming up on the show, we'll talk to Mike Babcock. We'll get into some football and some tie-dye fashion tips. Can't wait to talk to Babbers. Mike Schuhart. What a weekend for the PGA, man. It was incredible with anything you can do, I can do better when it comes to bombs from many, many feet away to win in sudden death. Shuey will join us. We loved catching up with him and him sitting in last Friday as we were out at Wilderness Ridge. Brad Edwards, college football insider with ESPN in 1 hour. And then our dear friend Jay Moore, Blackshirt Husker, NFLer, host of the More To It podcast and co-host of Big Red Wrap-Up. Jay Bird got to sit down with Bill Moose last night and the crew on Big Red Wrap-Up. So let's start there. As yesterday you had the pure joy, honestly, wherever you're at with the president. As a football fan and Nebraska fan, you had this thought for a while yesterday that October could be a reality to play football. Is that dead? And you had Bill Moose correspond with Hail Varsity. He corresponded with the Lincoln Journal-Star. And he also sat down with Big Red Wrap-Up last night. And what's the return to play? What are the scheduling options? What are the dates? And here's Bill Moose from last night. And I'll follow up with that because I still don't, and you can light me up if you want, I still don't think October's out of the question. We'll hear from Bill Moose. We'll hear from Ronnie Green as he was at the mayor's press conference a little earlier today, but here's the Moose.
Right now, the earliest that we've discussed is a Thanksgiving model. There has been a lot of support early on for 1st of January. Personally, I think it gets a little scary if we start any later because, as Jay knows, being a former player, that the body can't really bounce back with another season just down the road. So I really think the earlier the better, but we've got to be careful and make sure that the pandemic is under control to some degree and that our testing protocols are consistent and working. So I think that it would be a 7 or 8 game season, conference only, with a championship game occurring probably right around the beginning of March for that January model.
So that's what's on the plate right now for the Big Ten. But I think there's other conversations possibly happening. We'll get into that with Jay Moore. We'll talk with Mike Babcock about that. But here's Ronnie Green, and was asked about it today at the mayor's press conference when it comes to return to competition.
There is active work by the hour in the Big Ten about how to return to competition, when to return to competition, all of the policies and protocols and procedures, much like we have been talking about here in a much more detailed way for return to competition for fall, what would have been fall sports. And I am very encouraged that we are going to see that happen. And I am very hopeful that we're going to see that happen yet this year.
So it's ongoing. It's not ever stagnant with those conversations about return to play. So let's get into some other folks around the media. You've got Bobby Carpenter, former NFL guy. He has been kind of in front of this from Columbus, does a morning show in Columbus, I think on The Fan up there. You have Bobby Carpenter, and this was what he tweeted out this morning. Very encouraging news with the Big Ten. Kevin Warren had a good handle on what is needed for sports to resume. The federal government will provide enough tests for all fall sports in the Big Ten, which solves some critical questions. Schools have great medical centers for any additional required resources. More to it, hearing tests will initially be for football to get them playing, to provide the necessary revenue to save non-revenue sports and get them back and preserve their opportunity to compete. So you've got this situation where can we really talk about October? Can we talk about October 10th? You just heard Bill Moose. And I don't have wax in my ears. I got the Q-tips out this morning. Did some work. And I'm not going to shut down October. Let's go to Dan Patrick for a second. Dan Patrick, of course, sportscasting legend, used to be with us for many, many years in the afternoon on ESPN Lincoln. And his source reached out to him because you've had folks come back post-President and Warren meeting yesterday. You've had folks in the media say, look, it ain't going to happen. No. What the hell are you thinking? October. Bill Moose has even said right now we're looking at January or Thanksgiving as the earliest, which is fine. That's what's been the focus right now. But what have we seen? What have we seen with this stupid pandemic? What have we seen with this football season? Things aren't set in stone. They're not even bolted down. There may be some duct tape, but it's ripped and it's old, so who knows how good the stickum is to it. Let's see if that conversation can't happen about October. If you get federal government support with rapid testing, you've got FDA approval for that, but it comes down to the myocarditis. So
myocarditis?
Myocarditis. I usually have it written down in front of me. I didn't, and there we have the butcher job. Myocarditis is that's what you're going to have to sell to a number of the presidents and chancellors when it comes to liability and health and safety. You had Jay Paterno talk about it when it comes to the EKG and the machines that scan and test. That's 90 miles away at Penn State. I don't know if there's anything on campus for Nebraska or if it's at UNMC. But if you get that equipment and those machines to the campuses where kids can get scanned, then that would meet part of those health and safety measures that get updated, those procedures that get updated. Because you can scan kids daily or weekly for the myocarditis. So you need to get moving forward with October 10th because, again, the source that said the Pac-12 and the Big Ten are going to tap out to Dan Patrick came back and said, look, you've had folks refute this October discussion point. Listen, if you can get the updated procedures and safety measures knocked out, you can get things rolling by October 10th, and that's kind of the date, right? And if you're a college football program, I mean, Ohio State practiced today. Nebraska is practicing, okay? You're not in pads, all right? But you can get that green light to ramp up and go again. And even if you start practicing, well, got to be within a week. You need the green light within a week to be able to be ready to go and start your season October 10th. That way you can have a 8 or 9 game schedule, have a championship game, and give a Wisconsin, give an Ohio State, give a Nebraska, give a Penn State a chance to play and win the Big Ten. And there's enough as good as advertised feeling out there with Ohio State. They've not really had anybody opt out. I mean, they're loaded to go put a title run together. They're still pissed about Clemson. Okay, last year in the semifinal. Ohio State wants to go try and play and win a national championship. I am not going to shut the door and lock it. I've learned that so far through this whole stupid pandemic when it comes to college football. Now, time will tell with what happens moving forward with kickoff in the SEC. I think the Big Ten is going to be cautious for sure, and they'll be observant because you're going to have the NFL kickoff a week from tomorrow, and you're going to have BYU and Navy on Sunday. You're going to be watching some of these teams that are going to be kind of your guinea pigs. Do you have enough time to observe, get positive feedback? Look at Central Arkansas. They've had 0 positive tests since their kickoff to college football last Saturday. That's awesome. The other thing that needs to happen when it comes to the Big Ten bylaws is you need your 60%. Can you flip 6 schools? Can you make the decision 9-4? 9-4 football versus 11-3. You got to flip 6 schools. And back to Dan Patrick for a second. He doesn't think there's going to be. His source says he doesn't think there's some schools that want to play. So let's go there. Say you're Rutgers. Say you're Michigan State. Say you're Minnesota. And they just say, we're out. We're not having this discussion. We're done. We're out. So does the Big Ten shrink back to 10, and do you only need 6 out of 10? Or do you got to count the all 14? Here's what I believe may be revisited by the Big Ten. Can you get 10? Can you get 8? Can you get 9? And can you slam a season together and do so and allow teams that want to and can meet safety and health protocols to play? We talked about this 3 weeks ago. We talked about this leading up to the Big Ten pulling the plug. And Nebraska kicked this thing off before anybody about wanting to put a schedule together if the Big Ten wasn't going to play. And due to postponement, not canceling, they couldn't put their own schedule together like Army has, like BYU has. So let's revisit. Let's let the folks that pass your safety and health protocols and have the equipment and the testing available for all fall sports to move forward. That means Iowa. That means Ohio State. That means Michigan. That means Penn State. That means Wisconsin. That means Nebraska. There's 6. Give me 2 more. Not going to get Northwestern. Not going to get Minnesota. Do you get Purdue and the Brominator to jump in? Their president's Republican. Not in the White House with the school, and he voted no. Can you flip him? Does Illinois and Lovey? Does Lovey go have a chat with the president of Illinois? Sparty? Sparty wants no part of football. Honestly, based on just their situation, new coach, never had a chance to practice, new roster. Rutgers, I'd love to see Noah throw the football this year for the Scarlet Knights, but they're in a bit of a hot spot, at least they were. And there's no way Minnesota's going to be allowed to play ball. But can you get Penn State and Wisconsin and Michigan and Nebraska and Iowa and Ohio State? And if that's all you get, do you let them go do it? Do you let them go compete for a Big Ten championship? Do you let them play if they meet those health protocols?
Well, first, Bill Moose and Ronnie Green have to go Frank Underwood House of Cards style and go get these votes. That's the first thing that's got to happen.
You got to find the whip in the house, don't you?
And get those votes by any means necessary.
You are so right about getting the votes. I appreciate that. Listen, I'm not putting any flowers on the grave here with football. Probably a really poor choice of words with COVID. I don't mean it that way, but I'm not shutting the door on it, okay? And I'm not, and I don't think Bill Moose is ready to jump out and say, sure, we're looking for October. I think in his heart and his head, he thinks maybe that's a possibility. If it's a daily conversation that Ronnie Green's talking about, I wouldn't rule anything out. And if you can get, listen, if the Donald says, Hey, Penn State, I know you hate me. I know your governor hates me. I know I'm running against your guy from Scranton. But what if I can deliver 4 EKG machines and monitors and scanning devices, courtesy of the federal government, if you get football back on in-state college? Would you say no to it? It's no different. I mean, he'll get on the horn and get a GM plant somewhere to start cranking out EKG machines like he did ventilators.
You would have told me at the beginning of this year that Trump would use the Big Ten Conference to try to get reelected. I would have called you crazy, but everything in this year has just been so weird.
Do you know the states? Do you know the?
Oh, they're very important, yeah.
Right? I mean, you look at the electoral. They are monstrous.
She would have thought the Big Ten Conference could have a place in determining this fall's election.
Well, you ask yourself this. We laid this out yesterday. I don't care how you vote. I don't care who you vote for. But if you're on the fence and you're a giant football fan, you may just say, yeah, why the hell not? Or if it doesn't happen and you've got the blame game going on, there could be some real buy-in to who prevented your beloved football season this fall. And that's a reality. Mike Babcock's coming up at Hail Varsity. We're presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. Great to be with you on a Wednesday. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbal, Brad Edwards, ESPN Insider coming up. Black Shirt Jay Moore on the way. We welcome in historian, author, Hall of Famer Mike Babcock, 40 years plus of amazing Nebraska coverage at MD Babs on Twitter. Babbers, how are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing well, Smitty, all things considered. Trying to stay safe.
Well, I'm glad you're staying safe. We are going to dive into some tie-dye Grateful Dead Crocs in just a second here, because tie-dye is the style of choice for homework. How much are you buying or selling this October discussion point about football? I know what Bill Moose said. I trust Bill Moose completely. I understand things aren't ever stopped when it comes to conversations about trying to return to play for Big Ten football. So where are you at when you hear 10-10 potentially?
Well, when I first heard that, I thought, well, there's a reason for optimism among football fans. I guess myself included, but the more I think about it, the more I think how difficult it is. Just even simple logistics of how teams are going to travel, the kinds of things that typically you would have planned for this a long time ago, and now you're going to have a very short period of time to make those decisions and make those plans, and I think there's that difficulty on top of what you've been talking about. Trying to get a majority vote in the conference, and whether or not you could play some sort of a season with not all 14 schools involved, because there are some that look like they're pretty committed to not playing football. It just seems to me like it's a head spinner, to get done by October 10th, because we're already now we're into September, and it's not just practice time, which is also preparation for the team, but it's just the logistics of putting together a schedule, setting up travel arrangements, and so forth.
What'd you think of the fact that the news yesterday was President Trump and Commissioner Warren on the horn together for 20 minutes?
Well, I thought that was interesting, and I think this discussion of the government's going to pay for machines to get on campus for schools to play football in the Big Ten. I guess it doesn't apply to the Pac-12 because the Pac-12 doesn't want to play, right?
Well, I think Arizona does,
Okay,
and I think
so-
I think USC does, and I think everybody at Autzen wants to play, but I don't know that their governors are interested in any phone calls from the president, and vice versa.
Yeah. Well, I mean, does that have a ripple effect then? Do you supply those to the SEC and the ACC and the Big 12 that the schools are, those schools are already going to try to play? I just think and what's the overall reaction of people that aren't football fans? They look at it and say the government's spending money to do this so football games can be played. I don't know. It's just, again, it's a head spinner. I would be surprised if the Big Ten is playing football on October 10th, but I've been wrong many times before, and I didn't think we'd be having this discussion when the Big Ten season was canceled. When fall sports were canceled in the Big Ten, I would have said that was it. The Kevin Warren and the people that voted against it, the fall season, were going to hold fast, and there would be no such discussion of this, and there would be no sources telling me that they could be playing by 10-10. Much less, I was surprised that November, at the end of November, that there could be some beginning of a season. Which again, I still think that's going to be difficult to ask student athletes. If you're talking about the health and safety of student athletes, particularly in football, you start in November and you play into the spring conceivably, and then you turn around and have a fall season. I don't think that's a good thing. I guess you get done fairly quickly, right, if you do that?
Yeah, I think so, and I just don't think, something's better than nothing, but I think when you look at it, we're talking a dome, we're talking winter, we're talking depleted roster, and you're not playing for anything other than to play.
Yeah, exactly.
In the winter. It's just great. We get to go hook up at the Rose Bowl, and no one cares because you're just playing for the Rose Bowl. I guess that would be very Big Ten, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, it is tough because you're going to have a depleted roster, right? Like you said, you're going to be playing you're not going to be playing at home. It's not going to be, and I put that in quotation marks because you're probably not going to have fans there anyway in either case. But it's just, it is so difficult to say what's going to happen with COVID-19, much less, what's the wise thing to do. And, obviously we'll soon find out with the conferences that have decided to go ahead, how's that going to work and what's going to happen there. But, boy, it's a difficult decision for anybody that has to make that, I think.
Babbers, it is fascinating that we're talking about still the possibility of playing ball, be it November, be it January. We're fingers crossed for October. And does any of this happen, this conversation, this movement, this push, without Bill Moos, without Scott Frost, without the Husker 8 lawsuit?
Well, that's the thing that it's kind of there was the passion for it. Certainly came from Nebraska, and Nebraska took the lead. But then as soon as Ohio State got involved in it, it was like, Ohio State's leading the charge here because Nebraska got just hammered initially for even suggesting that, and then all of a sudden when Ohio State got involved, then it was a pretty good deal, and people got on board a little bit more. But I think that I don't know that the discussion would have continued if there hadn't been the Nebraska I want to call it passion for football. That this thing has gotten to the point that it has, where we're at least discussing the possibility. Again, whether it happens or not is we don't know that, but we do know, I think, that it was Nebraska's drive that got the discussion to this point.
Well, Nebraska's playing the role of fullback once again.
Yeah, exactly.
Just getting back to Kevin Warren canceling the season, he said it was an overwhelming vote. We learned on Monday that it was 11-3. Iowa, Nebraska, and Ohio State were the three. Are you surprised that only 3 teams voted for the season? I mean, I know we heard so much in the past couple weeks about, it was overwhelming, but we didn't really know for sure.
No, it didn't, Elijah. It didn't surprise me. I think that, the comparison I used, and I even wrote about it, it reminds me of the Big 12. When the Big 8 was joined by 4 schools from Texas, and the talk was presented to us this way. It's like, nothing's going to change. They're just adding 4 schools. Well, immediately the Big 12 office moved from Kansas City to Irving, Texas. There was a good sign of what nothing was going to change. And then when there were significant votes early on in the conference, there were a couple of 11-1 votes where Nebraska was alone. If the Big 8 schools had stuck together, I think it might have been a little bit different outcome, but they didn't. And for the most part, they voted against Nebraska. So Nebraska consistently found itself on the short end of some of those votes. And, I think we're seeing that. That was my initial reaction to the Big Ten vote. It's like, well, here we go again. Nebraska's in the minority on something, and it just reminds me of what happened in the Big 12, and one of the reasons that Nebraska got out of there.
Mike Babcock's with us, historian, author, Hall of Famer with Hail Varsity Magazine, hailvarsity.com. Babbers, we were talking this morning over on KFOR about sweatpants, fanny packs, and the new pandemic fashion trend is tie-dye clothing. How many tie-dye shirts do you have, brother?
Well, I don't know that I have that many anymore. I've got the ones that are the select ones, the ones that I just could not get rid of.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're special.
Yeah, I've always liked tie-dye. I like colors, but I probably didn't fit from my era when tie-dye was first really popular. I probably didn't fit the standard for a lot of that stuff, but I certainly did appreciate the tie-dye shirts. My hair wasn't particularly long, and I think the first time I had a beard was when I was actually at the newspaper, and I wore sport coats and ties. And
well, you're the Chicago Tribune's top 10 best dressed, brother. I mean,
yeah, there was a classic story. But
you've got some really awesome Grateful Dead tie dyes that you wear.
Oh yeah. I do. I really appreciate the tie dye thing, and I am a Grateful Dead fan, but. I probably don't fit the description of Deadhead, even though I might look that way, and my passion for that music is such that it might fall into that category. But there are probably other categories where I don't really fit there.
Loud and clear, Babbers. I totally get you. Loud and clear.
Yeah, it's good, but yeah, I'm surprised that tie dye has kind of come back.
Well, it's good. What about the Crocs? Would you wear the Grateful? If we got you a pair of Grateful Dead tie-dye Crocs,
no, I'm probably not. I heard somebody say that. I'm probably not a Crocs person.
That's okay.
Yeah, probably not. Probably not that. I'm not even saying probably not. I'd say no on that. Very kind of you to think about that. But no, I was interested that the Grateful Dead. It's that whole Grateful Dead, merchandising thing has kind of gotten out of hand, I think. But I got some of the original stuff. That's where my interest is.
It's the way to be. Mike, we will talk some more football, and we'll get into some more football next week because the Big Ten world of football will keep spinning. So never gets boring or old. And thanks for a few minutes today.
Yeah, when life looks like easy street, there's danger at your door.
A little Grateful Dead to say goodbye. Appreciate it.
Be safe.
You too. There he is, Mike Babcock at MD Babs. Follow him on Twitter. Talk a little golf. Mike Schuhart's on the way.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Brad Edwards, ESPN Insider, the latest on the Big Ten and college football here in 30 minutes. We welcome in our partner from Friday out at Wilderness Ridge. What an amazing time We did the show live, a happy hour with Hail Varsity last Friday, 4 to 6 on the deck. He even brought a tent, man. We say hi to Mike Schuhart. Shuey, what do you know? How's your week?
Man, it's beautiful. Beautiful week.
You have ordered up that weather. You know it?
I know it. Just keep this going for a few more months. How about that?
That'll be perfect. And while you're taking orders and making things happen, let's get this October 10th thing. Let's make it a reality. Would you bet your money or my money on October 10th with football?
Hey, you called that last week on the show.
I thought maybe
did.
I said something about that. Yes.
I think you did. I think you're the one that made that happen, man. You put that good karma out there.
The reality
out
is
there.
you hire a really dirty private detective and you get pictures of people.
It's amazing how you can get things done if you know the right people.
And you just say, hey, here's what I got. Oh, well, listen, I think it's crazy to think that we'll know, right, until we know. But hey, what do you make of the president? We've talked golf stories about Trump before, but when's the last time a president, a sitting president, made a phone call to somebody that's a commissioner of the league not to say congrats on a national title? Like,
Exactly.
never.
That's got to be a first ever. That never happens. It's like, good for him, though. I mean, it's good for us if it helped make it happen.
No, I agree with you here. And you know a little bit about the Big Ten. You've coached in the league for a long time. And all right, if Nebraska needs to flip 6, you got Ohio State, Nebraska, and Iowa. And we know that Penn State, Wisconsin, and Michigan want to play. Let's say, just for argument's sake, that we can get the presidents and chancellor of those 3 schools to flip. Doubtful. But say you get those 6 of the other Big Ten schools, who do you try and go Frank Underwood on?
You got to go Iowa. Aren't they going to flip?
Right. Well, I was there. You have the 3 that,
that's right.
You have 3 yeses: Ohio State, Nebraska, Iowa. You have we want to, but mom or dad won't let us. That's Michigan, Penn State, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Say you say, well, Jimmy's doing it too, and you know Buckeye's doing it, and Herbie's doing it, and Hawkeye's doing it. Come on. So maybe they relent. Maybe there's enough medical equipment and testing delivered. Maybe there's job creation. I don't know what's pulled off to get it done, but let's just say those 3 go, along with the 3 that are already yeses. Who can you get to flip? Purdue, Indiana, Illinois, Sparty, Rutgers, Northwestern, Minnesota.
Well, I got to believe you can get Indiana, without a doubt.
Yeah, I mean you got a PE coach with the bike shorts and whistle around his neck, and Coach Allen, and I mean I think he's a good coach. But
you got to be able to get Indiana. They got to go.
I mean
Purdue?
Notre Dame's playing, for God's sake. Yeah,
Exactly. How about Purdue? Why not Purdue? I mean, I would sure think they'd want to play.
I think they want to play too. I think the president's on record yesterday, and he's a Republican guy. That he voted no. But there you go. So you've got Ohio State, you've got Nebraska, you've got Iowa, you've got Michigan, you've got Penn State, you've got Wisconsin and Purdue and Indiana. You need one more. Can you get
Michigan go? If Michigan goes, Michigan State's got to go.
I think Sparty's ready to just hide from the season, to be honest with you.
That's true.
I think you go after Lovey, don't you?
Yeah. Can you get him to flip, though? Wasn't he pretty adamant about not wanting to play?
I think he wants to play. And you got Illinois, where the rapid test development kind of happened, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So maybe you go get Illinois. I don't think P.J. Fleck or Minnesota wants any part of a season.
No. I agree with that. Just because he hasn't said anything. That guy's always running his mouth, and he hasn't said a peep, so it's like...
You're right.
That dude doesn't want to play.
Well,
if he'd want to play, man, he'd be chirping like a
he'd be running his mouth. He'd be singing. So we're in unison here. Illinois, Purdue, Indiana, come on down. I got to ask you, when's the last time you saw somebody tell Dustin Johnson to hold my beer on a playoff hole with Ram knocking down a 66-footer after a 45-footer went down.
How about that? That
was incredible.
Absolutely epic, wasn't it?
That was fun.
You know, the only thing that missed was fans. That place would have been going absolutely bananas. So that was epic golf. That was so fun to watch.
Mike, in your objective view, which shot was the better shot?
Oh, man. I can't say one was better. They were both equal. It was I match you, you match me type of thing, you know? Dustin's got to make it to even get into the playoffs. And then Rahm's like, take that. So it's like, yeah, that's pretty cool. It's just really fun when guys kind of get into that mode in the competitive golf side of it. They, instead of hitting each other, they do crazy things by making long putts, hitting incredible shots. You know, that's golf's version of a big hit or dunk or something like that. You know, it's pretty fun to watch those guys when they're on the top of their games.
With Ram, his really snaked down. I mean, it went everywhere to the clown's mouth. I mean, it was one of those, the way he read the green for it to go left and then right and then the speed.
He had a 2% chance. He had a 2% chance to make that. What are the odds of that? 2%.
Man,
come on.
That's impressive. Shuey, what's the longest putt you've drilled?
Ooh, I made some pretty long ones before. Probably 80-footer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
With the Shuhart putter?
Oh, yeah.
I love that. Real quick, give me a thought on Atlanta this weekend and East Lake.
Great golf course. Another one kind of like what they just played. They'll set it up tough. So Ball Strikers golf course. You know, it's funny because you look at the leaderboard this week, really tough golf course. A lot of really great ball strikers up there on the top of the leaderboard. Atlanta's going to be the same. A little different venue because you're going to have a little different grass. So it's guys that are used to Bermuda, growing up in Bermuda will have a little bit of an advantage. It's a lot different playing out of like bluegrass, like around here. So those guys have a little advantage, got a little adjustment period. Hitting out of that stuff, it's not nice.
No, I wouldn't imagine it is. Shuey, what, as we hope for sooner, fall football this weekend, man, going to be beautiful. Holiday weekend as well, and I mean, place to be is your deck at Wilderness, and of course on the course, man. Tell folks what's in store this weekend.
Weather's supposed to be beautiful. I just looked at our tee sheet. Labor Day, we're already packed. So great golfing weather, great food, great drink. What more is there, man? Let's play golf, go sit on the deck, have some drinks, have something good to eat.
Get some football on.
Yeah, that'd be even better yet.
I like it. Shuey, we'll talk next week, buddy. Look forward to seeing you again soon, and thanks for the time today.
You bet. Thank you, guys.
There he is, Mike Shuhart, Wilderness Ridge Golf. That is a holiday weekend. Little football, little drink, little deck, and making the putts.
He's in his 30s, but sounds like he was born with a stogie in one hand and a brew in the other.
Now, say my name.
It's Schmitty on Hail Varsity Radio.
I got the body of a taut, preteen Swedish boy.
One final time this hour, Brad Edwards, ESPN Insider College Game Day, is checking in 10 minutes. Jay Moore from Hail Varsity, his podcast, More to It, and Big Red Wrap-Up, his sit-down with Bill Moose last night. We'll talk to Jay Bird about some golf and, of course, the possibility of October football. And we want to talk wings. I am a bit of a wing snob. I have a bunch of frozen chicken wings in my freezer, and I always love going to the grocery store and going to the cold case or the packaged, the non-frozen, and just getting them day of and then throwing them on the smoker. And with fall around the corner or late kickoffs, typical 7 o'clock kickoffs, you get done with the weekend edition of Hail Varsity, you go throw the smoker on and you smoke wings for 2.5, 3 hours, and you pour a crown, and it's awesome. Well, this is incredible. This is Andrew. Andrew was at the city council meeting. You've probably seen his plea when it comes to what's in a name, and Andrew spoke for many with Lincoln City Council, and he wants the name to be appropriate when we're talking wings, versus tenders.
Lincoln has the opportunity to be a social leader in this country. We have been casually ignoring a problem that has gotten so out of control that our children are throwing around names and words without even understanding their true meaning and treating things as though they're normal. I'm talking about boneless chicken wings.
You want bone in or boneless, right? That's a common question. And more from Andrew in his fight, the good fight, about the appropriate name.
I propose that we as a city remove the name boneless wings from our menus and from our hearts. Bones. Bone. Number one, nothing about boneless chicken wings actually come from the wing of a chicken. We would be disgusted if a butcher was mislabeling their cuts of meats, but then we go around and pretending as though the breast of the chicken is its wing. Number two, boneless chicken wings are just chicken tenders, which are already boneless. I don't go to order boneless tacos. I don't go and order boneless club sandwiches. I don't ask for boneless auto repair. It's just what's expected. And then number three, we need to raise our children better. Our children are raised being afraid of having bones attached to their meat. That's where meat comes from. It grows on bones. We need to teach them that the wing of a chicken is from a chicken, and it's delicious.
Bone is better. You get the bone-in pork chop, you get the bone-in steak, you get the chicken breast on the bone. He's making sense, Elijah.
But what could we call boneless chicken wings instead?
Tenders. I'll take a chicken tender, please.
I liked his suggestion of what was it, saucy nugs?
Yeah, saucy nugs. That's all right. So thank you, Andrew, for stepping up to the city council and fighting the good fight. And I'm going to do my part and for now on abstain from frozen wings. I just got to knock out what I've got in my freezer. I'll do that this weekend. College football, ACC, Clemson, Georgia. How about the Big Ten? Brad Edwards is next.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Into hour two. Thanks for spending time on a Wednesday. It's Hail Varsity Radio presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbal. And coming up, Jay Moore, Blackshirt Husker NFLer and part of Big Red Wrap-Up. His sit-down with Bill Moose last night. We say hi to Brad Edwards, ESPN Insider College Game Day at J. Brad Edwards. Brad, we're getting closer and closer, bud. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm not as popular today as that dude in Lincoln, though, who addressed the city council.
Andrew,
that was
we were
going
just
viral today.
Yeah, we were just talking about Andrew's his name, and you got to fight for things that are important to you.
Absolutely.
And damn it, it's chicken tender. It's not boneless wings. Pretty good.
Those are not actually wings. They are. They're kind of like little chicken fingers, like little chicken thumbs or something like that. I'm with them on that. They're not wings.
Oh, exactly. And I'm gonna do my part. And I was just whining to Elijah that I'm usually I've done wings that are in the freezer and then I'll smoke them, right? But my preference is to just go get them either in the package or in the meat case, and that's how I've usually. This time of year is great because you start covering football, or you get a late kickoff and it's a road game, and then you can throw a football party while you're air quote covering the game at home on your patio, and you can turn the smoker on and roll the TV outside. I mean, it's just wonderful.
My only thing with wings, I love wings if they're done really well and with the right sauce and all that. But I will never order them anywhere that I go because you don't get your money's worth. I've never tried to see how many wings I could actually eat. Like if I had an unlimited supply, how many, if it was all you can eat, I would think it would be somewhere in the 40 to 50 range. And I don't know what that would cost you in a restaurant, but
that's a good point. Next time you're in town, and I got a spot for you in town that will go. Now,
okay. You got a sponsor?
No, well, we'll work on something.
Are you putting the bill? Okay.
Either way, yeah. I'm not just setting you up. We'll make it worth your while.
All right, we got to do that in golf.
Yeah, we'll make it happen. We need to get Miami back in town, so there's a road game, so you guys are here again, which is awesome.
We got to get Bo back in town too. I miss Bo. I want to check in on him too.
Well, let's just start there before we get into the president and Commissioner Warren.
Yeah, how about LSU? Huh?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's opting out. Publicly, EZO's saying the right things. Privately, that locker room's probably been destroyed. What do you make of all the opt-outs from LSU, man?
Yeah, that's really weird. Obviously, the whole year is weird. You're always going to have issues with motivation coming off a national championship. There's a reason that very few teams win 2 in a row. But I'm not sure LSU ever even had a chance to win 2 in a row. When you look at the assistant coaches that they lost, on top of losing Joe Burrow and so many, there was 11 guys drafted, and they tied the record. So the losses were already significant. Now, that's not to say that they're going to become a 500 team, because we know they still have a ton of talent because of the way they recruit. But as far as being good enough to beat Alabama or Georgia, I don't know that they even had it, going into the spring before everything else. Then when you start to have, some guys for whatever reason, and that's the thing, is that we really don't know unless the guys are willing to say why it was that they left. I mean, I'm sure you saw the article about Coach O today, and there were some players that were not happy with him expressing his like for President Trump. But is that why they opted out? I mean, it's possible. I've also heard rumors that there are agents that are just hanging out around a lot of the big time talent programs. Mm-hmm. And getting in kids' ears and trying to capitalize on the fears that they have that something bad could happen because of the virus, and basically talking them out of playing. And by the way, as soon as you decide not to play, sign with me, and then we'll start getting you ready for the draft. And so, is it some of that stuff? I don't know. We just don't know what it's related to. But I do know this: that the more guys opt out, the easier it is for the guys who are still there to say, you know what, we're not even going to be competing for a championship this year. I'm not sure if I want to be a part of this. So maybe someone else who is on the fence decides to follow the others. And I tell you what, LSU they've got to be down in the 70 range as far as scholarship players. And this is a season that we know, with everything else going on, depth could be a big factor in who ends up, winning certain games. So it's all setting up to be really bad for them as far as a defending champ. By the way, I would doubt in the history of college football, or maybe let me at least go back as far as, since World War II. I have no idea what type of wholesale turnover there might have been prior to then. But at least since World War II, I cannot imagine there was ever a defending national champion that lost as much between on-the-field talent and coaching talent from one year to the next, coming off a title than LSU did. Or maybe you take championship teams out of the mix and just say any team. I don't know if any team has ever lost as much as they have from one season to the next. It'll be, if they go 7-3, I'd say that he did a heck of a job.
Brad, I'm seeing schools like LSU with a lot of talent opting out this season, but I'm also seeing schools like Clemson, who's retaining most of their talent for this season. When you look at the Big Ten starting in the spring, which direction do you think that the players in the Big Ten are more likely to go?
Well, I think it all depends on what they think their draft prospects are. That if they believe that they've got a pretty good chance of getting taken in the first 2 days, And, of course, if you believe you got a chance to go day 2, it probably doesn't take a whole lot to talk you into thinking that, you know what, if you perform really well at the combine or whatever it may be, that maybe you could work your way up to day 1. Who knows what you could convince a player of who has a lot of confidence in himself already. But I would think that, you know, a lot of the better players are likely to opt out with the spring season. Now, there'll still be plenty guys left in order to fill out the rosters and play the games. But as far as the guys that you'd be most excited to watch, I would think that, you know, at least the ones that would be draft eligible, I think would be likely to not play.
Brad Edwards with us, ESPN Insider College Game Day, at @JBradEdwards on Twitter. We've been talking about this kickoff start for the Big Ten inching up, not just January, but maybe Thanksgiving, and maybe from Thanksgiving we look at October. Now, Bill Moose has said that's just a rumor. You had President Trump meet with Commissioner Warren over the phone, and you have some movement. You've got Ohio State practicing. You have sources around Ohio State saying, you know, October 10th, maybe October 17th, he can still slam in a 9 to 10 game schedule. You've got Michigan practicing, Nebraska's practicing. Nobody's in pads, but maybe you're starting to see a ramp up. Who knows? It's still.
They might as well get in pads. Did you see the news that just came across about the NCAA is furloughing its whole staff?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, no one's monitoring it. Why don't you just go ahead and practice in pads? Who cares?
Yeah, who's going to rat you out? Now, you know somebody that wears Buckeye red, lives in Michigan, and has a has a scope, so they can rat out one another.
They just need to have a mutual agreement that they're all going to break the rules, and so be it.
And what are you going to do, right? We'll just send the president back in. So, what's your reaction to Trump jumping in, and now we've got some momentum here? Or do you think it's momentum, or do you think it's false hope?
No, and to tell you the truth, I'm not sure if this whole thing was put out by Trump because he wants to make people in some of those key states aware that he wants it to happen, you know, and he's doing everything he can, or whether it's the other side that's putting it out because they want to get people's hopes up, knowing that it's not going to happen, so then that they'll go back to being angry at him again when it doesn't. I couldn't even tell you who I think is more likely to have planted it, but I believe that's all it is a plant for political purposes. I don't think there's any way they would play in October. And even the November thing, I realize that among the coaches and the ADs, the November thing is really interesting, and I'm sure those are legitimate discussions. My question is, are the presidents actually entertaining this idea of playing in November? Because it seems to me, and I could be off base, but it seems to me that unless there is some major change, you know, whether that is a breakthrough in technology as far as the testing and their ability to test, whether there's some sort, obviously a vaccine. I don't know. It's like some new information that comes along. Unless there's a significant change between what they had available when they made the decision to postpone a couple weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago, whenever that was, and Thanksgiving, then if you're the president, how do you justify walking it back and all of a sudden playing in the fall? I mean, you've got to have a really good reason you can throw out there publicly for doing it. Otherwise, it looks like you're basically saying, you know what, we might have jumped the gun and made a bad decision. Probably should have been a little bit more patient, and now we're going to fall in line and do what everyone else is doing. Or not everyone else, but at least what look, let's be honest. The places that are doing it, that are going ahead and playing, are the ones that they refer to as the football factories. Mm-hmm. You know, and the presidential types, university president types, they look down on those schools. You know, they don't want to be like those schools. So I can't see the Big Ten presidents wanting to play in the fall. And on top of that, I mean, it wasn't that long ago that these universities were announcing that they were going to stop allowing kids to come back after Thanksgiving because the belief was, and maybe it still is, that the virus numbers are likely to go up again once flu season hits. So all of it it doesn't make sense to me as far as the timing of starting around Thanksgiving.
I think it's idiotic to do Thanksgiving. I think it's idiotic to do January if you get the other Power 5 schools that get through a season and they're playing the college football semifinal when you're kicking off against Rutgers. I mean, no one's going to be watching.
Yeah.
So
well, here's one I'll throw out at you, though, and I have no idea. Like, okay, let's just say, for argument's sake, the Big Ten was able to put this thing together, and they're going to start playing around Thanksgiving.
Okay.
I believe that they would probably be at week 4 when the ACC, Big 12, SEC were playing their conference championship games, the same weekend as week 4 for the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way that the selection committee might look at one Big Ten team, and we'll just say Ohio State because we know they're the best team? Is there any way that they could look at what Ohio State's done through the first 4 games and say, you know what, they're one of the 4 best teams, we're going to invite them to participate in the playoff? Is that possible? And if it is possible, if there's not a rule up front that, okay, Big Ten and whoever else decides to start playing later, they're not going to be eligible for the playoff, unless there's a rule like that, would the Big Ten be tempted to front-load Ohio State's schedule in order to give them maximum opportunity to impress the selection committee within those first 4 weeks so that they might get invited to the playoff? I have no idea.
I think that's a brilliant idea. I think you do it. I mean, you let them kick off with Michigan. You let them play Penn State. You get Iowa in there, and you get Wisconsin and maybe Nebraska, and there you go.
Yeah, I mean, get whatever the best teams were that were going to be on their schedule, let them play them in the first 4 games. And if they win them all, you know what? If they're eligible, I think you got a hard time, taking a second SEC team or an American team over them if you're the selection committee.
Well, I want to see Clemson, Ohio State round 2. That's in Ohio State's not had anyone really opt out. So, that'd be fantastic. That was a great game last year.
And look, as much as we've been, most years we would assume in a situation like this, the SEC is just going to get a second team.
Mm-hmm.
But we just talked about what's happened with LSU. They're gutted. Georgia, the news today that Jamie Newman is opting out. Now, of course, he'd never played it down there.
Right.
And he was an above-average quarterback at Wake. Maybe with better talent around him at Georgia, he could have been really good. I don't know. But I don't think Georgia's going to be as good. They had a long way to go offensively already.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's just Alabama. Maybe there's not a second team in the SEC that really would be difficult to keep out of the playoff. I don't know. I think it's fascinating.
You've got the Notre Dame and Clemson question. Maybe you get 2 from the SEC the ACC this year, and you've got the SEC winner, and you have Oklahoma. But depending on how much film you get out of Ohio State, they should be definitely considered, even though because it's out of their control, they may be short X number of games. They may not be at game 8, 9, or 10, but maybe they're at game 5 or 6. Who knows? Brad?
Yeah, and of course, once again, the question is, would they be eligible out of the gate? And then if the selection committee shows them, would they stop playing in conference and get ready for the playoff, or would they keep playing the conference games in between? Crazy.
Yeah, I'd hope they keep playing if they already got the nod. Brad will continue to follow college football, my friend, and we'll get that wing and golf thing nailed down, and we'll get you here the next time we have football. Hey, you take care. Thanks for the time today.
Okay, you too. See ya.
It's Brad Edwards. I'm putting money down. Brad could knock out 45 wings. That's what I'm thinking.
That's a lot of wings.
Jay Moore's on the way with Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it. It's Hail Varsity presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Excited to say hi to Jay Moore, black shirt Husker, NFLer. Of course, his podcast with Hail Varsity, More to It, frequent contributor and co-host from time to time with Hail Varsity Radio. And he's a co-host. He's always, looking good on TV. That was weird to say. Big Red Wrap-Up, Jay Moore at JayMoore44. Jay Bird, what's up? How are you?
So I'm doing well. Just on a drive up to Omaha right now, and other than that, things are well. Weather's good. Rumors of football come back earlier than we might expect. keeps me a little more optimistic and less cranky. So not too many complaints here.
I was smiling yesterday as well, and it got shot down, and we'll get into Bill Moose here in a little bit with your interview with him and the crew at Big Red Wrap-Up last night. But, President Trump kind of starts the day off yesterday. Let's talk, and him and Commissioner Warren do talk, and you got Twitter on fire with, hey, maybe the Big Ten can move forward. Jay, you're a great golfer. I don't know where President Trump falls into the talent level of golf. I just got to ask you this. A, would you play around with him? B, would you rat him out if he improved his lie?
1,000% I would play with him. There is no doubt about that. I think it'd be an absolute blast. I've known a couple people that they were like just around him before he was president, and he said he was a lot of fun to be around. They actually play with him, but they're in like a group ahead of him, behind him, but had some sort of interaction on tees, and he said he was great. So I would definitely take the opportunity to play golf with him. And no, I would definitely not rat him out if he improved his life. I mean, no, not at all. Unless, even if we're playing for, I would have a hard time ratting out on the president. That'd be a tough deal. I just kind of, look the other way.
You totally know he'd play for money, don't you?
Oh, yeah. He'd probably want to play for a whole lot more money than I would have. So, but it'd be fun. I would definitely, the opportunity ever arose, I would definitely take that one. That'd be an all-timer right there.
Last thing, would you let him win?
No. Absolutely not.
You'd smoke him.
I'd try. I'm sure. Yeah, I would try to. Yeah, I think he would want that. I think
that's pretty good.
He probably has the Secret Service out in the trees kicking balls back into play.
Well,
so he's gonna have all the opportunities to beat me as possible. I'm not going to let him win. I know that.
Jay Moore is with us, Sail Varsity Radio, co-host Big Red Wrap-Up. Jay, you had a chance to sit down with Bill Moose last night, and Bill Moose is saying, look, there's things that are being discussed as part of the competition committee, and October's not been on that radar. What were your takeaways with your Moose interview last night?
Yeah, I mean, he held everything pretty close to the vest. He did say that they meet as athletic directors for 2 hours every morning. I think he said as of yesterday, that was our 120th meeting, their Zoom meeting. Listen, October 10th or October 17th is definitely on, it's being discussed. He doesn't want to put it out there to get people's hopes up, I mean, that's the last thing. We've already had our hopes, up and schedule released that, football's going to start this week, and that got shot down just, 5 to 6 days later. So I think he understands the situation there, and he can't get people's expectations and hopes up to, have a much earlier start than anticipated. And, everyone knows that, for the last couple of weeks, the Thanksgiving start's been discussed. So I think that's maybe a little more realistic, although I don't, some people are like it's October 10th, October 17th, enough time. I mean, I think if you gave these guys, 2 weeks, I think everybody could be ready to play. I really do. And they'd make it happen. And I know, especially, out of the 6 to 8 teams that really want to play, I think they'd make it happen. But the one interesting thing I took away from it was the communication between athletic directors and presidents and Kevin Warren. I think the ADs never had a chance to sit down with all the presidents and chancellors as a whole, as a unit. All in the room together. It was the ADs communicate to Kevin Warren then communicates to the presidents and chancellors, and now we've all played the game of phone tag. We know how the message can get kind of screwed up going through that. And I think this is what's frustrating, especially this day and age. You're making a decision this big, you can't get everyone together in one room to make a decision and to make a decision for the best. And I think, and maybe Kevin Warren wanted that so he can control his message. He can kind of say certain things and leave things out, and it's messy. Bill said that there was a communication error, and that's very, very frustrating. And in this day and age, where when you're making this huge economic decision to shut everything down, it's frustrating. It's absolutely frustrating. It's mind blowing. And I said it's mind blowing about 3 times on the show last night talking about it, and you can't believe, why would they not have a seat at the table with everyone and discuss it with everyone. And maybe, maybe that's what they wanted, because maybe a lot of these, presidents and chancellors obviously didn't want to play, and they didn't want to be talked into it. And it's frustrating. That's the biggest thing I took away, that they couldn't just get together and discuss and honestly just be civil about it and have a normal conversation. It was, we'll talk to Kevin and Kevin talks to them, and these guys talk to Kevin and Kevin talks to us. It's like, what are we doing? Is this like note passing in sixth grade? Check, do you like me? Check yes or no. I mean, it's comical. That this is going on with the Big Ten conference. So obviously you can see why the frustration with everyone and parents and coaches and obviously athletic directors, because it was handled so poorly.
Jay Moore is with us. He's part of Big Red Wrap Up. You hear his podcast, More to It, and frequent contributor to Hail Varsity Radio at JMoore44. Bird, Jay Bird, a thought with that messaging, and now that you've got Moose and Frost on the competition committee along with Ohio State's brass and Iowa, I mean, there can be, and don't kid yourself, you know where Harbaugh and Michigan are at, you know where Wisconsin's at, you know where Penn State's at. Is there a world we live in where October isn't dead, and I'm asking you to speculate, and maybe the end result here is you've got benchmarks that are met, you've got rapid testing, you've got EKG capability, and the teams that want to and their presidents say yes can go play, where you have a Big Ten that's maybe really a Big Ten instead of 14 teams, and you still get things in and kicked off by fall so you can have a title shot if you're Ohio State.
I would love for that. I mean, I would take anything at this point. Hell, there was a discussion of, there'd be 6 teams, either a 10-game home and away. Okay. I'd take anything at this point, whether you want to be all on the same page and you want to have some unified approach to everything. But, I mean, there's this economic impact that goes on with not only universities, but the cities and towns they're in. And, for these teams that want to play, I mean, and Michael Silveira was telling me last night that he goes, Lincoln takes a huge hit, but what people don't realize, because Michael actually lived in State College, and where Penn State was, his dad was a chef up there for the university, and he's like, they have a way bigger economic impact than Lincoln, Nebraska, because there's nothing within 2 hours of State College. Everything's 2 hours away, so they solely rely on athletics to bring people into their town to spend money. People just don't come there to hang out, and see things. They drive there to watch football games and basketball games and hockey games and so on and so forth. So, he was completely kind of floored by Penn State's vote by the president. But I would just hope to think that just somehow you would just say, hey, you guys want to play, then this is what we're going to do. Well, if you guys don't want to play, then you don't need to. You can take this time. I know it makes it a little messy, because all of a sudden, what do you do with eligibility issues for the teams that do play, the teams that don't play? That becomes, it's already a messy situation anyways, just with scholarship numbers going forward. But I would take I would just take 6 at home games, 6, whatever it is with, the 3 teams that voted yes, and, Iowa and Ohio State, or something, or just something, just to get guys out there and to see, football being played. But whether it starts in October or starts in, early November or late November or something, I think just getting football in 2020 instead of 2021 would be really ideal, and would make me, and I know a lot of people in this state and in this country, really happy. But, things have, crazy things have been happening, and all the information that's coming out. So, as you get more information about the virus and more information about ADs and conversations with coaches and, the conversations with chancellors and presidents, I think it's obviously a really fluid situation. So hopefully better decision making is happening, and, real conversations are had between ADs and presidents instead of ADs and Kevin Warren, and Kevin Warren transfers that to the president. So that just gets too messy in my mind.
Jay, about a minute here. Congrats on just a phenomenal run for you at the state amateurs. You finished second. You shot a record low 65. Did you have any ram putts from 70 feet, brother? Way to be last weekend. Congratulations.
No, I did not make any putts from 70 feet. It was definitely doable on some of those greens out there, but no, I just made some putts, hit it good, hit it close, and made some putts. So no, it was just one of those days where you get some good bounces, and you miss when your misses are in good spots, and you're chipper close, and you made some putts. I hit as many greens as I did the day before, and I just had 9 fewer putts. So I shot 74 the first day, and I literally hit the same amount of greens the next day and shoot 65, and I had 27 putts. So there's 9 strokes right there. Use the math. It's pretty easy between a 74 and a 65. So it was a good day. It was fun. Obviously needed a couple more coming in to beat Andy, but he's such a good player. So I knew once he got to 6th, it wasn't. He probably wasn't messing up. He's been there way too many times. So he obviously played great and has been playing great all this year. But it was fun to give him a run in the last day and finally kind of have everything come together for once. So you guys, those rounds don't come around too often. So I'll enjoy that one and try to recreate it more often. But I don't foresee that happening too anytime soon.
Jay Moore's with us. Jay, we'll catch up soon. Congrats and thanks for the time today, man.
Yep, you got it, Smitty.
Good to talk with Jay Moore, Blackshirt Husker NFL. Good thoughts there on Jay's part of the interview with Bill Moose. A reminder here about drinking and driving. 1 out of 3 fatal crashes involves impaired driving. That's drunk driving, buzz driving, or high driving. Law enforcement around the clock checking out sobriety checkpoints and saturation patrols. Start the conversation. Who's driving home? Brought to you by the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. The Jock Talk's on the way with Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back in, it's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Time for a Jock Doc Wednesday. Lincoln Orthopedic Center. Dr. Ben Woodhead is with us. Dr. Ben, how's your day?
Hey, going well so far, Chris. How about yourself?
Doing okay. Excited to talk a little baseball, and my kid's favorite player is Aaron Judge, now that Jeter's retired. And I think we're up to maybe 4 different Jock Docs on Aaron Judge. He just can't seem to get off the injured list, Dr. Ben.
I know, it's tough. Once you start kind of down that path of where you have an injury, and then whether he's coming back too early or whether it's just this kind of chronic type of strain that's going on, it's just hard to kick after a while.
Dr. Ben Woodhead is with us, Lincoln Orthopedic Center at Jock Doc Wednesday. So you had commentary this week by Aaron Boone, and really not a timetable for Aaron Judge when it comes to him getting back to baseball activities. Brian Cashman calling it a failed rehab when it comes to a calf strain, a second stint now for him on the injured list. How does a failed rehab happen, Dr. Ben?
Well, that's a good question, because you know that he's working with probably the best they have out there. And so, whether it's a situation where maybe he tweaked it as he came back and he wasn't completely 100%, or, whether he maybe came back too early. He's probably been chomping at the bit to get back as soon as possible. And so, makes you wonder, did you maybe come back a little earlier than you should have? And while you're not 100%, you're not quite ready, and then, you hurt yourself even more. That's certainly a potential.
Dr. Ben, let's get into a calf strain, and what are some ways on the diamond you can strain your calf? I mean, Judges had issues with, elbow. Judges had issues with oblique. I think that's just the amount of torque he gets, being a guy that's 6'7", 285, as hard as he swings. But now when we get to the calf region, what are your thoughts here as what maybe caused this?
Well, it's hard to say whether it's from throwing, he's playing off of that, or whether it's just running. That's an overuse type of injury, and, anything can kind of place him at that risk when he's, out there running or doing basically anything on the field. It can happen from any type of situation. And, as you get older, you're just more prone to it, and the more you're active, especially for these type of guys, the more they train, you're certainly at a risk for that, and that's probably what's going on.
Dr. Ben Woodhead's joining us, a Jock Doc Wednesday, Lincoln Orthopedic Center, and we're talking Aaron Judge, another stint and an extended stint here, no timetable in return when it comes to that calf issue. And, you know, we go back to the end of August when he got pulled. He plays the way you want to see a star play. It's not just at the dish, but you know what, that calf area running to second base is where it tightened up on him again. And kind of take us through maybe some preventative things that can happen moving forward, and no doubt I'm sure that the Yanks and their staff have gone over this with him, but so the next time you or I are hauling to second base during softball, how do we keep a calf strain from happening?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think at least now the main thing is he doesn't go back until he's completely 100%. And this, muscle and tendon type of injuries, these are kind of overuse type injuries or tweaking type injuries. These are hard to recover from, whether it's a groin type injury, whether, it's an elbow type tendonitis. There's not a perfect surgical solution for these types of things. It's really time and healing, and once you do get to the point of where you're at a lessened pain or that inflammatory component is down, then you get back to the rehab point where you start training to compete at the high level that he's at. And so, there's a lot of different scenarios that make this quite difficult, but most often just these are tough to come back from. It's a time thing mostly.
Well, and looking at Judge's injury history, you've got limited spring training in February. The guy had a stress fracture on his right rib. And then he punctured his lung because of a diving catch and attempt last summer. He didn't participate in full workouts and didn't play any games before the shutdown in March. And you know what this is? This is a guy that is in his late 20s that the world's on his shoulders, and he's great. But he has been just bitten by the injury bug so many times in his brief career that I guarantee he's probably pushing to get back.
Absolutely. And it makes you wonder with a lot of these guys whether they were working out during the COVID pandemic, as they get back, and maybe whether they have been prepping or not, how many of these overuse or getting back to activities type of injuries that we're going to see. This is unprecedented times, and people have not been out of sports like this in the past, so it'll be interesting going forward.
Dr. Ben Woodhead, we're talking Aaron Judge and his his continued stint, no timeline on his return for that strained calf. Lincoln Orthopedic Center at Jock Doc Wednesday. So when we talk about the calf and that region of your body, it not only affects you what you want to do on the base paths, but it affects your mobility out in outfield. Now they can DH him, but talk to me a little bit here about just the mechanics when you remember and look at his swing and where he generates his power from. Yeah, he's got great upper body strength with his football background, but he's really well put together, with his backside, and then his legs are big. I mean, so with this calf, will that limit his power potentially when he does come back, if he does come back?
Yeah, I think it absolutely will, because any type of swing, you're going to get a lot through the legs, and how can you really isolate the calves out and not use it? That's part of the reason that he's so great. So I absolutely think it's going to affect it, and it's going to affect everything, because when you have guys that are like this and so athletic and so powerful, they rely on every basically ounce of muscle they have, and so when something is off, you're going to see the effects. That's part of what makes him so great.
Is there another region that could be affected if he's trying to overcompensate and try and, I don't know how you do it, but baby that region that's a strain? Is there some collateral issue that could happen with the joint or a body part?
Yeah, it makes you wonder, does it set him up for other injuries if he gets back too early, whether it's in his hamstrings, quads, lower back, everything is going to take the toll or try and make up for what is not functioning at 100% in that calf. So I think with his history and the fact that he re-injured it, I think, the only wise thing is to wait until he's completely 110% to get back. You certainly don't want to push it a second, third time,
Dr. Ben Woodhead's joining us, a Jock Doc Wednesday. Aaron Judge, our topic, Lincoln Orthopedic Center. And Dr. Ben, what are some treatment options for that calf? Do you do Is there a gel? Is there heat? Is there ice? Is there ibuprofen? I mean, what type of, is there some sort of, ultrasound? I mean, what are the options for treatment?
Right. So just like any other type of overuse injury, you're first going to look at the RICE therapy that everybody talks about, resting it, icing it, elevating it if there's some swelling, but at the same time then doing anti-inflammatories. And he's going to, I'm sure they have the best therapists down there, whether it's a massage therapist, physical therapist, they're going to do soft tissue type of techniques. And, the therapists have a lot of new different techniques, whether it's an iontophoresis or, where they're using gels and ultrasound to basically try and stimulate that area to heal. They're going to be throwing everything in their power that they can at this to try and heal it, whether it's got evidence behind it or not. That's the nice thing, is that he's going to be treated by the best out there.
Dr. Ben Woodhead. Dr. Ben, thanks for a few minutes.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Chris.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at HailVarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, big thanks to Jay Moore and Brad Edwards and Mike Babcock and Shuey. Tomorrow, Bill Bender's Sporting News, Gary Barnett, Brandon Vogel, Pride of Chicago, Danny Burke will check in with us. Reminder about your friends at West Blue Realty. They specialize in residential home sales in Lincoln and the surrounding communities. And if you're moving in 2020, they can help and they can make it a smooth move for you for a limited time. You mentioned Hail Varsity and West Blue Realty can provide you up to $1,000 on the closing of your next home purchase. Give Tom Luby a phone call at 402-540-3768 or give Kelly Hofschneider a shout. Kelly's awesome as well at 402-202-2312. It pays to work with West Blue. WestBlueRealty.com. They can handle agricultural land as well. If you've got, a large radius you're looking to move, they've sold ag land all over Nebraska. Go see them today, 1120 K Street, Suite 200. Elijah, what's on the docket for you tonight? I know your Nuggets survived and advanced. You sweated that out. That was low scoring, man.
Yeah, but it was a defensive battle, something you don't see in basketball much anymore. Kind of felt very late 90s-esque. Just defensive battle, finished 80-78. That was fun. Other than that, I got the Avs on tonight, and maybe go play some basketball with some friends.
Good. I'm all winged up here, so I'm trying to decide whether or not to go eat chicken wings. And if we do so, how late that happens, so tomorrow doesn't completely suck. Big time decisions. We shall see. But let's get Jeff on the horn. Let's squeeze him in real quick on Hail Varsity. Jeff, thanks for hanging on. Thanks for calling back. Go ahead.
Hey, thank you. I've just been listening to a bunch of different national college football people and listening to them talk about Nick Saban and walking with the players that wanted to do the Black Lives Matter and listening to about football being so political sized. But when hasn't it been? Which president helped create the NCAA? And they talk about Paul Bear Bryant. Well, Paul Bear Bryant started bringing in African-American players back in 1970, 1971, which helped open the door for African-American students at Alabama. So I'd just like to hear your take on that.
Well, I think it's something that Nick Saban needed to do, Jeff, and did do. And Jeff, you look at Nick Saban, he listened. People say a lot of things about Nick Saban, but Nick Saban does care about his kids. It also needs to keep his kids happy. I'm not saying he's just appeasing them. I'm not saying that Nick Saban doesn't have some positive thoughts about social change. And he stood with his guys. Mike Leach led his guys boycott practice and protest. I mean, guys that are pretty hard-edged understand the outcry and the frustration that does exist, and they let them do their thing. I don't know that the kids at LSU felt that Orgeron understood where they were coming from. I think that's why you're seeing a lot of guys tap out. And when it comes to Bear Bryant, he purposefully scheduled USC. They had a number of African-American players on their 71 team. Sam Cunningham, Bam was his nickname. He ran for 3 touchdowns and 150 yards, and that finally got Alabama over the hump to start recruiting black athletes. I'm out of time, but thanks for the phone call, Jeff. We'll talk to you tomorrow at 4 on Hail Varsity.